Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at thedove.us. Okay, we are talking about stress today. And hopefully you're handling it okay. If you're not, call her. Nisha Jackson's in the house with Ventana Wellness, so we're going to talk about this subject that, quite frankly, is a killer.
It is a killer.
And
right.
We want to get you de-stressed and chilled out. And I was reading a little bit of history of cultures, and this is by far the most stressed culture in the history of the world.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're always in a hurry. Like, we can't go fast enough. And I think that that is the biggest difference between us and other countries, is that our speed is just so much greater. And that really leads to so much unnecessary stress. And I know I suffer from this too, so I have to keep reminding, every time I do something like this, it reminds me of how important it is to take care of your stress and take care of your mind with stress.
It's a stewardship issue that I think God gave us all to be responsible for, and how you doing with it?
Right.
What is stress?
Well, stress is your body's reaction to get you away from trouble. So there's lots of different types of stress. There's the stress that many of us are in today, which is not the stress we should be in.
Yeah.
Stress is really meant to be a low to moderate amount of stress, to be able to inspire us to get things done, to move at a good speed, to have an appropriate metabolism. But unfortunately, the stress that we are involved with today is a stress that releases too much stress hormones into our system. And we've heard a lot about that over the years as far as releasing stress hormones, but many people don't really understand what that means. And what it does is, when we ramp up our stress glands, our adrenal glands, and we release so much stress hormone into our system, what happens is it mobilizes all of our internal forces in order for our body to be prepared to handle the stress. So one of those things is our body gets flooded, our system gets flooded with glucose or sugar in our system, because that's what gives us the fuel to be able to handle the stress, because the body can't decipher between, okay, this woman is just stressed out because she doesn't have enough gas in her tank and she's late to pick up her kids and she's got to get to a meeting right after that, and a tiger chasing you. So the body can't really decipher. So what it does is it goes full force. It dumps a bunch of glucose into your system. It's just one of the things that it does. Yeah. And then what does your body do with all that glucose? Then the body has to produce a bunch of insulin in order to handle the glucose. So the insulin, because the insulin helps kind of moderate the blood sugar levels, right? So the insulin is a fat storage hormone, and it causes inflammation. So you can kind of start to see the breakdown of the body over a period of time if you do that all day long, where you're releasing these large amounts of stress hormone because you're angry, or you're late, or you've packed your to-do list with unnecessary items that you're just letting yourself down for. Whatever it might be, your children are sick, you don't have enough money, all of these things are weighing heavy on your mind. These releases of cortisol into your system constantly causes your body to be in a stressful state, which then leads to inflammation, heart disease, obesity, diabetes. So you can kind of see where it starts. And we've known this really since the late 60s, early 70s. I remember the first book came out in 1970. I remember my dad had this book. It was Type A Personality and Heart Disease, because my dad's very Type A, and it's genetic, And so anyway, and so we've known this for a long time, that this leads to physical complications and disease. So we have to somehow, even though we can't get rid of a lot of the stressful things in our life, obviously not all of us can quit our jobs and trade our children off or whatever, go lay on the beach in Hawaii. We can't do those things. So somehow we have to reprogram our brain and our circumstances in order to handle the stress, because it is killing us, and it does lead to really the top killers today.
All right, we're talking about this, and by the way, if you want to join us, you're welcome to 541-776-5368 or toll free at 800-373-5368. This is a big issue because it shows up in fatigue, shows up in high blood pressure, stress, shows up in all kinds of ways. You have a gift, I guess. God's gifted you with the eye to reach out and just say, that's your problem. This is it. It's the adrenal issue.
Yes.
Is that what you're seeing most?
You know, when I first, 22 years ago, when I first started really looking at hormone imbalances and different medical issues, I wasn't really focusing on the stress glands because we didn't really know that much about it at that time. But now we realize that the adrenal glands, the stress glands, are really the master glands, and everything else is downstream from that. So your ovarian hormones or the testicular hormones, male and female hormones, the thyroid hormones, the gut, the neurobrain chemicals, everything is downstream from the stress glands. So unfortunately, it really starts with how we're tending to our stress and our lifestyle, because it can ransack nearly every process in your body if you don't take care of it. And we're not really giving it enough credit right now, because a lot of people say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do with my stress. And that might be true. You know, they might not be able to do anything about their financial situation, living in an abusive home. I mean, there's many things that people can't do a lot about. And but there are things that you can do with how you manage the stress, and I think that's what I really like to focus on with patients, is getting their levels balanced and optimized, so they can kind of see things a little bit differently, and then they can handle the stress.
So where do you start?
So the first thing I do is I start with the top three, which I think are the most important, besides testing them and getting them balanced, which I think is absolutely imperative. Because if somebody's had stress for a while, what we see is the male and female hormones declining rapidly, and whatever they may be taking isn't enough to keep up with their demands, or they might not be taking anything at all. We also see over a long period of time, and sometimes a short period of time, depending on how stressful the event is, it could be an isolated incident that causes so much stress that they actually stop producing thyroid hormone, which then turns their whole engine almost in an off position. So then they stop sleeping, they can't turn their brain off at night. So it really kind of trickles down to every process in the body. So what I like to do first off is get them balanced, test them and get them balanced, but then really impress upon them that we have to do the basics. The basics are, we have to get you to sleep. Whatever it takes, we have to get you to sleep, because that's the best time for your body. It's really the only time for your body to recover. So the body has to go through that rehabilitation process every single night for a minimum of 8 hours. If you're stressed, you should be sleeping more like 9 or 10. Which is the exact opposite of what people do.
I love naps.
Naps are good too.
I took one Saturday, I took one Sunday.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yes, stress needs to be rested out, and exercise. You know, when I was talking about your system being flooded with sugar or glucose, you have to have some way to burn that off. Otherwise, it's going to go in the fat cells, and you're going to gain weight, and you're going to have a lot of inflammation in your body. So you have to have some way of burning it off, and exercise is really absolutely the most excellent way to do that. And many times, patients or people that I work with can actually get out of the workplace or out of the home for 20 minutes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when everything's just really kind of at its peak as far as stress.
Yeah.
And go for a 20-minute walk or a 10-minute walk and try to burn some of that off. I think what would be better is if they could get to the point that they don't have anything to burn off. And one of the studies that just got released, Perry, that I wanted to talk about today is so interesting to me. 10 years ago, they did a study, and they looked at people that were under stress, and they had a formula by which they were measuring how stressed they were. But they picked 700 people, and they looked at how they managed their stressful situation. And then they took a segment of that population that did not manage the stress well. They were angry, they were overwhelmed, they were hopeless, they felt like they were not going to be able to get on top of their stress. And then they watched those people for 10 years. So 10 years later, they actually went back and looked at those people as far as how is their health, what medications are they on, what life illnesses are they suffering from 10 years later. And they found out that there was this overwhelming percentage of increase in depression and anxiety and being treated for depression and anxiety because 10 years earlier, they were looking at their stress as being hopeless, being overwhelmed. They were singled out. Many of them were very angry. So more of the emotional component of stress. And interestingly enough, when they tie heart disease and stress together, the big connection is the emotional component. It seems to be the most cause of the most toxic stress. So I would say if you're feeling very hopeless or very angry and you can't seem to let go of that anger or bitterness, that you need to know that your chance of depression or anxiety down the road is very significant. So that's something that we should be thinking about.
Well, everything I read about antidepressants is not good. I haven't read anything about an antidepressant that would give me an idea that that's the way to go.
And they're handed out like absolute candy.
Yeah.
It's very worrisome.
Okay.
It's very worrisome because what happens, Perry, is that I think that sometimes they're needed and sometimes they're helpful. But what happens, I think, over time is you don't really manage the problem. You're taking a medication that doesn't allow you to manage the problem. And those are the people I'm most concerned about.
All right, let me take a quick break. We'll be right back. Nisha Jackson's with us, and we're talking about stress. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to join us, 541-776-5368, or toll free at 800-373-5368. We'll be right back. Well, we're back with Nisha Jackson, Ventana Wellness, and a tremendous resource, her clinic and her website is ventanawellness.com, and you can go there and get all kinds of information. And let me encourage you to check it out. And as you know, one of her associates is Dr. Joel Klein. He's in here with us a lot. We like Joel a lot. He's kind of high. You talk about a high energy guy. What does he put on his cereal in the morning?
He is high energy. I know, and he's so sharp.
Yeah. I don't know. I told him, I said, Joel, I don't know what you put on your cereal in the morning, but I want some of that stuff. But today we're talking about stress. And I don't think there's anybody out there today that isn't dealing with this issue. And the question is, are you properly managing it well? And Nisha's here to give us some stuff. Boy, you got the phones lit up. Let's take a few calls.
Yes.
And see where all this is going to go. And again, it's ventanawellness.com is the website if you want to get some information. All right. Hi, you're on the air with Nisha. What's your question today?
Yeah, am I on the air?
Yep, you are. Go ahead.
Hey, I had a question I would like for her to touch some more about on the lack of sleep and the mind not shutting down at night and what kind of solution there is for that.
Great stuff. Great question.
And I'd like for her to go into that.
Okay.
Pretty heavy, and I'll just take the call offline. I can hear it on the radio.
Okay, thanks for calling in. That's a biggie, isn't it?
You know, it really is. So the classic, when somebody comes in and sits down and they say, I am exhausted during the day, I'm not managing my stress, I'm flying off the handle, I get sick frequently, I'm irritable, I'm seeming to pick fights with my wife or my husband or whatever, and then I lay down at night and I can't turn my brain off. I am exhausted, but I'm wired. And that is the classic reverse cortisol rhythm. So cortisol is actually the stress hormone we were just talking about. It's meant to be elevated during the day so that you have really good focus and stamina and health, and you're able to manage stress well. You're sharp with your brain. You can get words. You find words easily. It prepares your body not to be sick. It boosts your immune system. So it's meant to be elevated during the day. But then first thing in the morning, it should be at its highest. And then by the time you go to bed at night, it should be at its lowest. So that's what tells your brain it's time to go to sleep. So when people are under chronic stress or even acute stress, they eventually get a reverse pattern, typically. So they're underproducing cortisol during the day because their body can't keep up with the demands during the day. So their body eventually, the adrenals, underproduce cortisol. But then by the time you get home in the evening, or you're settling down in the evening in your easy chair, if that even happens, your body finally says, woohoo, this person's not asking me to do anything. Now I can make some cortisol.
Okay.
And then you can't turn your brain off. It's like somebody just plugged you in. So the best thing to do is to take adrenal support supplements. And I really honestly don't know any other way to fix the cortisol at night, because there's no medication for it. Well, there is medication for it, but it's prescription medication that you shouldn't be on. So that would be sleeping pills, anti-anxieties, which is how we're treating it today. But a better way to treat it is to go right to the problem, and that is reversing the adrenal rhythm so that you can get that level very low at night. The most excellent supplement I've ever seen do it is something called Stress PM, and it's phosphorylated, not phosphatidyl, but phosphorylated serine, and it's very safe to use. We can use it in younger children, and it blocks the cortisol at night. It's not a sleeping pill. It blocks the cortisol at night so it doesn't keep going up, so you can actually safely turn your brain off, and it works excellent. So, and then of course we get the cortisol up during the day by supporting the adrenal glands during the day.
I had two other little parries to it.
Yeah.
Don't eat late. Give some good time between the time you eat and time you go to bed. And we took the TV out of our room 6-7 years ago.
Yes. The TV and the computer is a disaster with it. Within 1 hour of going to bed, you should not be looking at a screen.
Took it out. And I have to tell you, now, I shouldn't say that because I encourage you to watch the TV, but when
1 hour.
When I go to bed, it's I usually read, do some of my Bible reading, or listen to a good Bible lesson on the Dove radio, but I try to switch my mind from all that stuff.
Yes. Yeah, there's certain things that spike cortisol: sugar, alcohol, the brightness off a computer screen or a TV screen, or anything emotional, or exercise. So some people that are exercising very late in the evening, especially right up to bedtime, you're stimulating cortisol. That's not really what the body's supposed to be doing. And don't answer any disturbing emails right before you go to bed, because you can't, again, your body can't decipher what's what. So don't feed it information that's going to make you emotional.
Well, sleep is a big one. I know that you're really, that's where it all starts. Now, how do you start this? You do this with a blood test, right?
Right.
And what are you looking for?
So when I bring somebody into the office, I don't have a standard testing procedure. I really listen to their symptoms and their history and maybe what some of their risk factors are. But if somebody is under quite a bit of stress, I like to look at that whole adrenal, ovarian or testicular, the male or female hormones, and the thyroid. I like to start with that profile, because that's like a three-legged stool that's meant to be in balance all the time. And if one area is down, like if somebody is under a lot of stress and their adrenals are not working well, like they have that reverse rhythm we just talked about, typically there's something else going on too. And then I really like to look at the diet, because the diet is a problem in that if you're under a lot of stress and you're producing just these erratic amounts of cortisol during the day, where it's up and it's down, and you're overstimulating your adrenals, you're probably having issues with blood sugar. So you're having a lot of cravings during the day, your blood sugar's up, and then you eat, your blood sugar's down, and then you eat something sugary, and then your blood sugar goes up, and then you're just chasing your blood sugar all day long. Because this is how we manage stress. We use quick carbohydrates, they're called comfort foods, and then you just chase it all day long, and it makes you feel worse. So every time your blood sugar drops, your body has to release more cortisol, because that's a stressful state for your body.
All right.
So that's one thing that we don't want you to do.
Where does overall sugar intake and salt intake, are these factors?
Sugar intake is a problem because, again, you get in that chasing the sugar all day long, which makes your body more stressed. So we're trying to reduce the stress onto the body. So eating frequently, but making sure that your carbohydrates are very high in fiber. So if you're going to have a carbohydrate, you should have something that's very high in fiber: fruits, vegetables, whole grains that are very high in fiber, not the quick carbohydrates that don't have any fiber in them at all, because that slows the release of sugar. And then always trying to have something that has protein in it. My patients who are vegans or vegetarians are the ones that suffer often the most, because they're not getting enough protein or essential proteins to balance their glucose levels from one meal to the next. So, and then getting enough good fat in their diet, not the bad fat, the fried food fats, but the good fat, like the avocados and the nuts and the seeds and olive oil, or your favorite oil out there. So those foods really help satisfy you. You will notice also that if you're under a lot of stress, you will crave fat, because that's actually what your adrenals need to support them, is a good amount of healthy fat. So if you find yourself craving peanut butter or nuts, that's what I always crave when I'm stressed, is just a big spoonful of peanut butter.
No, wait a minute. That it's here at theDove. It's its own food group. It's not out there yet,
No.
but by the end of the morning, there'll be 2 jars of peanut butter open out there.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, maybe everyone's stressed here. But that's a big one. If you talk to people, often they say, I'm
so
craving
peanut butter's
peanut
not
butter.
good?
Well, peanut butter, especially organic peanut butter, is great. But you don't need a lot of it because it's very fattening, too. So, again, small amounts. So, yes, small amounts.
Everybody hear that out there?
Yes.
No, we eat a lot of peanut butter around here. All right, so this is really a time in everybody's life where they seem to be a little bit stressed out. And exercise, I know you're big on it, but everybody thinks they got to go to the gym and get on this routine and do it. I have found out the hard way. It was the hard way. I can be in and out of the gym in about 40 minutes. I don't have to go there and act like I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right,
And I'm not into that. I just want a good cardio, weight resistance, fast routine, and I'm done. And I do that maybe 3 times a week, and I'm fine.
Right. You know, we have to change our mindset about what exercise really is. Like this morning, I had to take my daughters to the airport, and I didn't have a lot of time to exercise, so I have a spin cycle in my house, and I knew I only had 20 minutes. And I like to exercise longer than that, but 20 minutes is all I had. So what you have to do if you have 10 to 20 minutes is you have to go intense. So, and you may need to work up to this over time, but you do these intervals of intensity. So if you have 10 minutes and that's all you have, you could do this outside or at your house or at the gym, where you literally start exercising for 1 minute and then you go as fast as you can for 1 minute, and then you slow it down for a minute and then you go as fast as you can for 1 minute, where you're just pushing yourself about every other minute, or even every 2 to 3 minutes if you're just starting out. So there's no reason why people can't exercise. If you have chronic pain, there's something that you can do. There's all types of exercise that you can do to get your heart rate up. So the other thing I want to make sure we say today is there's a little pressure point, I'll show you here, between your index finger and your middle finger. So right and in between, at the base of the fingers, in between the index, the pointer finger, and the middle finger, right here at the bottom, if you massaged that area right here, and you can massage it with your thumb, when you're stressed, it will relax you quickly. So that's a really good pressure point. That's something you should know, again, right here at the base. In fact, you know what's interesting? I've noticed in meetings or interviews with people, I've noticed that people intuitively just do this. Have you ever seen people rub their hands like this?
Yeah. Didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, and they probably don't know either, but that actually will help reduce stress. It's a pressure point, almost like the roof of your mouth is a pressure point, and it reduces stress, which is probably why people like to eat crunchy things when they're stressed, because it's hitting the roof of their mouth. So probably would be good if we all just had pacifiers in our mouths because we'd be less stressed. But eating crunchy foods like nuts and seeds would actually be good for stress. But this would be a non-calorie way of doing it, is that pressure point right there.
All right, before we run out of time, if people, they know they're stressed, if they don't address this, what are some of the consequences?
So consequences are, we know, scientifically has been proven that your risk for diabetes goes up dramatically. Your risk for heart disease because of the inflammatory factors goes up dramatically. Your risk for cancer goes up because a lot of people don't understand the connection between stress and cancer. And also age-related illnesses, but cancer for sure, because your body is so busy taking care of the stress, mobilizing all of the internal forces to take care of the stress, that it can't work on keeping your immune system elevated. So then your immune system is compromised. Your risk for depression is dramatically improved. We've known that for a while, but this recent study really kind of calls it home to us, and anxiety. So those are some of them. There's often many more that we could talk about. Inflammatory issues, chronic pain, headaches, insomnia. So the list goes on and on. But the big ones are diabetes, heart disease, cancer, depression.
Okay. And water. Last question.
Water is very important.
I want you to know.
You always bring it back to water.
Is that water?
That's very good.
Okay, that's
and
water.
you've been doing so good on your diet.
Well, I'm trying. I'm under a lot of stress.
Your lifestyle, it's good. So if you're under a lot of stress, I think the take-home message is do the basics. You have to keep the basics going, otherwise something unfortunate is going to happen. Breathing, sleeping, eating, getting rid of the sugar and the processed carbohydrates. And telling yourself that this will pass. Next week, how is this situation going to look next week or in a month from now? It's not going to be that bad. It hardly ever is as bad as we think.
There you go. I tell you what, check it out. And if you need testing, you can call Ventana Wellness and make an appointment at ventanawellness.com. It's a great resource, and get on a program today. Let me encourage you. I think it's a stewardship issue to take care of yourself and start walking. That doesn't cost anything. Drinking water, make some kind of a change, and then one will lead to the other. And before you know it, you'll be on top of this a little bit at a time. Well, thank you, Nisha.
You're welcome.
Good stuff all the way around. All right, we'll be right back.